Welcome to another edition of Minot Matters here at the Dakotan. I am Jonathan Starr. It's brought to you by Shocks Safe and Lock. Today, joined by somebody I did my homework, and last time you were on, it was September of last year. So it's just over a year. Probably nothing's happened in the last year.
No, it's been quiet. Not a lot going on at all.
Not a lot going on at all. That is a joke. It has been a crazy busy year for the Chamber EDC. There's been a lot of big projects you guys have worked on. We're going to talk about those. Changeover in the consistent changeover in leadership that you guys have with your board. Ryan Ackerman now in play as the board president. And there was also this conference that Minot got to host. That is a huge deal for the economic development in North Dakota. The ED-ND. Kind of break down that conference a little bit. Let's start there.
Yeah, so I have the honor of serving on the ED&D Board of Directors. It's the Economic Development Association of North Dakota. So it brings together industry, economic developers from the large communities and small. And our focus is really on driving forward economic development projects and economic development initiatives that benefit not only our communities, but our state.
Yeah.
So we had the privilege of hosting the Fall Conference, which is a large conference that's held annually for ED&D.
Yeah.
With that, actually comes the responsibility of teeing up the conversations that we're going to have that are important to developers across the state. So we take on putting on the whole conference. Our goal this year with that was to really not hold it in a conference room per se, but really get people immersed in our community because there are a lot of cool wins that Minot has.
Right.
So we hosted a couple of the days at Minot State University in Hartnett Hall, where they've recently renovated that whole facility. We brought people onto the campus of Minot State, which is amazing. Because higher ed is a key strategic partner of ours. We also brought into downtown with the Regency and Citizens Alley and got to showcase different pieces of our community that way. We hosted a social at the Magic City Discovery Center, which is an amazing facility that always blows people's minds away. And that, again, was done through partnerships. And so our theme this year was really about stronger together and building that partnerships, because none of the work that we don't do it alone.
Right.
It is all about bringing in strategic partners. So when we kicked out the conference, we focused on Senate Majority Leader Hogue kicked it off and talked about kind of the bigger picture of what's happening in our state. Then we brought in Commissioner Sanford, President Shirley, Pam Strokeland on to talk about education and how that plays a role, not only in driving our economies, but really on the workforce side. How do we work with our partners there to provide workforce solutions? We had a panel, which I'm really proud of, with our strategic partners with the intermodal. And so we had Commissioner Goring, Commissioner Doug, and he is a fabulous strategic partner of ours. But we also had BNSF brought in one of their key intermodal leaders from Fort Worth, Texas. We had the Northwest Seaport Alliance, which is our strategic partner with the ports of Tacoma and Seattle, where we actually ship our intermodal trains. We had Rail Modal Group with Greg Obertine, who is our operator. And so we were able to have a really thoughtful conversation on why intermodal matters, how Minot has really kind of set the gold standard of this inland port pilot program that we partnered with the Northwest Seaport Alliance to kick off. And we can go into that a little bit more. And then, of course, we ended that first day at the Discovery Center. When we rolled into the second day, we really were focused on some of the big initiatives that the state's working on. Natural gas solutions, where does AI come into play? How does that work with the data centers? We brought in an international speaker on AI, who is like a chief innovation officer for the International Economic Development Council.
Wow.
Dell did a fabulous job of talking about like where AI is going and what we have to be prepared for as developers. And then we also had conversations on nuclear energy. We had discussions about tourism and how destination development grants are driving economies. We brought in the tourism director, Department of Commerce was there. And then, of course, North American Iron was one of our keynote speakers with Jim Bugalis, who I know you just recently had on. And that was the first time we were able to talk about that project and the fact that it is going to be located in Minot. So that was an exciting day for us. And then we ended the day showcasing Citizens Alley. Then when we wrapped up the final day, we were able to spotlight, we have a role in supporting entrepreneurs, and it happened to be that it was the same day as our Startup Minot networking event. So we were able to bring in 3 of our kind of champions in different industry, with Jasmine from Prairie Sky, of course, Jonah Lanto, he wears a lot of different hats, and is just a fabulous, and then Kent Kirkhammer on the New Coda side. And our economic development specialist, Mark Lyman, has always facilitated and kind of been a key partner. So we had a thoughtful conversation and actually hosted that event at the conference to show how Minot supports entrepreneurs and really focuses on telling those stories. We were able to then also to talk about workforce development with Katie Rostenhow from the State of Department of Commerce, and then ended with a panel showing how organizations are working together with the Greater North Dakota Chamber, EDND, and then also like North Dakota League of Cities. And the reason why we brought in we had legislators attend, legislators were part of different panels, but that's kind of the agenda in a nutshell. I'm sure I probably missed something because it was a jam-packed 3 days, but we wanted to bring conversations that are really coming out of this last legislative session and are also driving our economy. There are big things that we're looking at. The fact that we're taking a look at nuclear energy. Right. And power. And what could that do? There's a study underway by the state. These are conversations we weren't having a decade ago, but they're critically important to the infrastructure to continue to move our state forward. And it's also where economic development is going. These major kind of things, from natural gas to, we'd had water. Reese was here talking about the water side of things. So, I mean, there's just a lot of conversations that we have to be a part of these days because there's a lot of moving parts on a state and local level.
First off, congratulations, because that incredible amount of work that you and your team put in to make that happen. In Minot, unpacking that a little bit, starting off with day one, that's when I was able to be there. You had this intermodal site. You guys actually did a tour of that. Sadly, I wasn't able to be on that tour. But I feel like Minot has 2 main industries, and I kid, okay? Just work with me for a minute. We have ag and oil. That's who Minot is. But then when you look at it a little closer, you remember, oh yeah, that's right. North of town, we have this really large Air Force Base, and actually that does play a huge impact. And then you go for a drive towards Surrey, and you start running into all these train tracks and this whole facility, and you realize that there's actually several pillars to Minot. And I feel like this intermodal site does get overlooked in the impact that it plays at Minot. Can you kind of, there you had people from Texas, you had people from Seattle, you had people from all over the country. They're talking about the role that Minot plays in this. Break it down for us a little bit.
Yeah, so the intermodal site is very unique. The state of North Dakota private industry had really tried they knew that we are geographically kind of in the center of North America. And I think my board chair said it before, that makes a cute sticker or little slogan, but when it comes to driving the economy, it is a disadvantage for us. Yeah. And so when we looked at, I've served on both the chamber and economic development boards. And when I was on the former Minot Area Development Corporation board, we started to unpack intermodal and what did that look like and how could we provide a solution to the state. Now, granted, there was a little bit of wonkiness there that we had to unwind to be able to do it. And private industry wasn't going to step in. So we as a Chamber EDC really made a bold move. And I started in May of 2022 at the Chamber EDC. And in June, we started the process of acquiring the assets. So we got the banks out. I see. We took out a large loan to do so. Yep. We had worked hard to build out a pilot program and attract an operator. We learned really quickly, you don't put out an RFP and intermodal operators come to Minot, North Dakota. You have to go seek them out. And then we had worked hard too, when I was on the board for MEDC, we had worked to build out these strategic partnerships. We found out that we need a port to ship to if we're going to have an intermodal site. So we built out a relationship with the Northwest Seaport Alliance, and we talked to them about how do we build out a pilot program and could they work with a community like ours. We're fortunate that we have Gavin Yard with BNSF, so Minot is already a strategic location for the railway, and so we had a partnership with BNSF, but we also had to get into not just what they do with their regular kind of train movements, but what do they do in intermodal and how could Minot be a strategic partner? So we built out that relationship. And then, the Northwest Seaport Alliance was probably our first partner at the table. Then BNSF. We also had worked through getting our logistics parkland certified. So we're the only BNSF site certified location in North Dakota. At the time, one of 14 nationally. Wow. That means BNSF sees us as a strategic partner and knows that there's additional opportunities at our site in North Dakota here. And so those partners were absolutely critical and key. Then we had to find an operator, and that took us a lot more work than I think we anticipated, but Rail Modal Group had just started up their operations. They had rebranded, kind of changed ownerships, and they were operating out of Fremont, Nebraska and Amarillo, Texas.
Gotcha.
So they had already worked with and had the container companies, the ocean carriers, kind of that side of the logistics. So we then worked hard to attract them and get them to come and operate our site. So in 2022, the Minot Area Chamber EDC acquired the assets, and we purchased the land from the city of Minot. We already had a stakehold into the rail there. And then we worked out a program prior to that with BNSF to provide a pilot program, or we had provisional approval to use the BNSF main line to test out and see if we could get an intermodal site up and running. But we had the commitment, though, at that time that we also had to move and get off the main rail line. So we invested $2.4 million into a rail track expansion, wow. $2 million coming from the state of North Dakota, that legislative session. And then we fronted the other $400,000 to get that project across the finish line. So now we have a separate line that you saw on the tour, yep. That is specific to the operations of intermodal off of the BNSF main line. That allows us to do the volume that we are doing today. That week of the EDND conference was the first time that we would actually move 3 unit trains out of this site. And so we actually in October are celebrating 5 years of intermodal service.
Wow.
The Northwest Seaport Alliance sees us as a key strategic partner, and they spotlight how now other communities are looking to mirror what we have here in Minot.
Hey, finally being a leader. Mm-hmm. That's something we talk about, that Minot, it's always good when Minot does that. So we see Minot being that leader with these organizations that are outside of North Dakota. What kind of impact does the intermodal facility have directly to the community, would you say?
Well, it has a huge impact, and actually we're working on trying to do an economic impact study just so we can really quantify that. Yeah. And we can say that we're shipping to 21 different countries, that we're doing at least a unit train a month. Actually, our volume is much higher than that now. We're averaging 3 to 5 unit trains a month. Gotcha. And really what that does is it's not only supporting the egg industry, but anything you can put into a container can ship out of our site. And so it has opened up opportunities. It has created additional value to those, whether it be value-added egg or just straight commodities that are moving to fill a train. It is providing optionality, too, to be able to get we're the top producer in over a dozen different commodities. Oh. Now we can actually move those products out of North Dakota. And as mentioned, we're shipping to 21 different countries today. Yeah,
that's incredible. Okay, so economic study is going to show that even more, but just being able to have that access to those different countries is huge. You have the next day, the announcement of North American Iron officially. This is something that was starting to come to the surface, but officially got announced. Let's talk about that first, and then I want to talk about like the overall deal. But all right, so North American Iron, $2 billion project, 700 acres, 600 plus employees. Once it's all up and running, this is something that it was just destined for Minot the whole time, right? Just gonna be in Minot. What role did the chamber play in making North American Iron happen in Minot?
So this is a project that was announced in a different community early on. Okay. And so we were, the lead came in through the state of North Dakota, through the Department of Commerce. And when that happens, when there's interest from an industry, Commerce reaches out to the communities across the state and who has land available, who has access to rail, who has, from a regulatory side, any barriers that it can be removed. And then the power is the big thing with that. Water and power tend to be the biggest conversations that we have on a regular basis. The biggest barrier to growth for us in this community has been for a long time access to natural gas. Although we know we're right down the highway from
Yeah.
Natural gas.
Right.
We're trying to figure out how to capture that to support the oil and gas industry. It seems like an easy problem to solve, but it isn't. And so we have been working since I started at the Chamber EDC in 2022. We've been working really hard of how do we build out a pipeline from Tioga to Minot? What does that look like? There's been, through multiple legislative sessions, discussions of, do they subsidize a line? Do they buy down capacity so we can build a line, which is what's happening on the line that's going from Watford City to Underwood, eventually to Fargo. Okay. That is, there's a state program that'll be helping that line. Our line from Tioga to Minot, the Minot Industrial Pipeline, which I love the name, is going to happen because of private sector investment. Wow. And that's tied to the project that you just mentioned with North American Iron. Right. So when we started discussions and we're at the table with North American Iron, we weren't the first location that was selected. But what we started to do was show our advantages. The Minot Area Chamber EDC owns over 700 acres of land in the logistics park of North Dakota.
I see.
Something that we branded, marketed. It's property that is, the intermodal site is on the south side of the county road. Then you have AGT Foods as an anchor tenant that we worked with, obviously, over the years to be in our community. And then from there, we had over 730 acres, just under 800 acres, that was owned by the Chamber EDC. So you have one owner that is trying to drive primary sector into our community, either to fuel additional opportunities for the intermodal site or bring a new industry. It's already zoned correctly. We went through a process where the Chamber EDC in partnership with the city of Minot received a CRISI grant. So we had gone through a lot of the regulatory side to remove barriers to make sure it's zoned correctly. So we have a prime property that we've been looking for the right tenant for. So us owning that land was probably a game changer. Not everyone across the state has that kind of strategy where you own land, but for us, it is a part of the attraction. And then obviously we've been working with WBI Energy and the developer, and how do we build that natural gas pipeline? So that was announced at the North Dakota Petroleum Council annual meeting. Justin Kringstead and his presentation from the Pipeline Authority included for the first time at the end of September the Minot Industrial Pipeline. So that news came out first. And then obviously at the ED&D conference, we were able to announce Jim Bugalis's project with North American Iron.
So specifically on this pipeline, because this is something that is like a sub-story to the main story of North American Iron, but this is actually a big deal. My understanding is that Minot has missed out on projects simply because of not having pipeline access like this to natural gas. So what kind of, when you look at economic development, when you look at projects that potentially, what kind of impact does just this natural gas pipeline have for Minot?
Well, there's a reason why the state has been talking about natural gas solutions at all levels, whether it be from the oil and gas industry, Governor Armstrong, state legislators. It's a big deal. And this isn't just something for North Dakota. This is something from a national standpoint. The discussions we're having in the space of energy is really important. Okay. It is something that we're talking about through the Department of War and, why it matters on the military side. Why does it matter to industry? We're seeing this race with AI and how it's kind of changing the landscape. I mean, I can't tell you how many phone calls we get on data centers and what are those opportunities. There are... The volume is really something you can't even begin to describe. And it all is tied to having access to natural gas or the energy sources. Well, building this pipeline from Tioga to Minot really opens up additional opportunities for strategic investments, because reliability on power is something that we're having regular conversations in Washington, D.C., and why critical infrastructure is so important. So if we can have these these resources here, it does change. That's why we're able to attract a company like North American Iron. Right. It is really something that will, I see this as another, it's a major industry, just like oil and gas was with the development of the Bakken. You're right. Right. It attracts workforce. It's not, it is bringing people into our state. It's something that's very attractive, and these are good paying jobs that we're bringing in. It's not pulling away. No, it could have some from the local economy, but just like oil and gas, it attracted people to North Dakota. Right. And it has pivotally changed our state. We see projects like this making that kind of impact. And for us too, it matters, because the other part that I don't know we've really focused on is where we're getting the feedstock for the steel industry is from countries like Russia and Ukraine. Right. So when we are relying on our foreign adversaries, on the Russia and China, for example, when we rely on our foreign adversaries for major resources that we need within the United States, that's a problem.
Right.
And when we have two peer adversaries controlling industries that make a difference in our backyard, we have to lean in. And so these kind of projects aren't just like one lane, easy peasy, this is how you do it. They're pretty complex, and that's why it takes years of working on these before you hear an announcement. And when we talk about that we work on macroeconomic efforts, natural gas pipelines, different industries bringing them into the state, it's years of work that we're putting in to get that done. And it's kind of the churning behind the scenes that people don't see until we can actually talk about a project.
Absolutely. And that's a really great point, because again, you've already highlighted it with Minot being a key player in the eyes of these groups that are outside of Minot. But this is something that puts us into the conversation for the entire United States. I believe my units might be off here, but it was around 13 million tons of this stuff that's imported each year. It's something.
I don't remember the exact number, but so it is. We're
13 is attached to it, and he's going to provide 2. The North American Iron Group is going to provide 2 of the 13 number, whatever the units is attached to it, around 10% of the total amount of imports. That's incredible, and it changes the entire industry. Or it could change the entire industry. And that's kind of where I want to go to next here is you have this intermodal site, which really allows getting this stuff distributed. Right now, we have our distribution networks.
Think about the inbound opportunities. We're bringing in empty containers right now.
Okay.
There's other opportunities there. We're bringing in empties from Chicago. There are opportunities for inbound that we haven't even broached or tapped into yet.
Right.
And so even with intermodal, we're not done developing that site. We're building out additional infrastructure to be able to move more trains, but we also are looking at what are the opportunities for inbound.
Right.
And that could be something that huge. Brings additional development too.
Right. So you have that whole deal that's still growing. You have this new industry. It's not a new facility, it's a literal new industry that's being brought to mind. It's going to change the pillars that you guys talk about. And from there, you could see a growth in actual manufacturing of, like, as Jim Bugal says, we can make the microphone that we're talking right now, or supply the material for that. We could begin to see some of that stuff break out in Minot. Is that stuff, as you guys look at this from a different perspective than we do at that macro level where you look at big picture, is that stuff that you guys are kind of like playing in the back of our head? These are some options?
Absolutely. And we're also, as I mentioned, our reliance on our foreign adversaries. Like I'll use a fact that China, for example, provides most of our ammunitions for the United States. So how do we bring that into the United States? And so those are also conversations that we're having, whether it lands in North Dakota or a different state. There are a lot of development projects that we're at the table for to attract them into our community. Now we're being strategic on that too. As I mentioned, the data centers, they're going to naturally kind of, we play a role in that for sure, but it's going to be based on the land, the capacity, the access to natural gas. And we're seeing some of that, but we're being cautious in that space because there is just so many players coming to the table. But when we can really focus in on things that have not only a local impact, a state impact, but a national impact, those really rise to the top where we put a lot of our efforts there. And then also too, we have to look at what matters to our local communities. Intermodal is a great example. We were logistically landlocked here.
Right.
And so we were providing a solution for the outbound side. Some of this is bringing in additional industries that will kind of change our community. And again, we'll have more people coming in, and then we haven't even talked about programs like Sentinel.
Right.
I mean, those are major modernization projects that are unique in the sense that encompasses 8,500 square miles around Minot Air Force Base.
Right.
It's not just the re-engineering of the B-52 or the LRSO weapon system that are also underway, but major programs like Sentinel have an impact on the community. The utility corridors, how do we navigate that? How do we ensure that we have the housing and what's needed for the workforce that are going to be building out these facilities? Yeah, it's over 600 jobs for North American Iron. Right. But also at the time of construction, we'll have over 1,000 people working on this project.
Right.
And then strategically, as we're looking at it, there's a reason why we partner with entities like BNSF. City Council, a couple of meetings ago, we've been working with BNSF knowing these big projects are underway. So how do we reduce crossings through our community? So as we increase populations and we grow the community. So, for example, the train crossing that's out by the North Dakota State Fair Center and the State Fairgrounds, where you have to go across two different sets of track. Well, if we're going to be bringing in more trains to provide the feedstock for North American Iron, and we're moving more trains out through our intermodal site, how do we remove those crossings so that we can safely get the workforce there, move traffic through our community? So in that case, for example, BNSF is working with us and the city of Minot. We brought forward a proposal to the city, and they are actually have hired a consultant to write the grants for us because they see how important Minot is, and they also see that they there's opportunities to remove crossings, and so they're working on our behalf to do a study.
Yeah.
And so all of this is so intertwined, and there's just the complexities behind it. But not often does the railroad come in and say, we're going to hire the consultant, we're going to pay to make sure that we're getting you guys the federal resources needed to do a corridor study so that as we move forward on these development projects, we have the right infrastructure in place to best support the community safely to eliminate crossings. So those are things and conversations that it's very complex, and there's a lot of things tied in, but that's just tied to intermodal and the North American Iron, because we see longer term that we need to be thinking through how does traffic flow through. And then that's why partnerships with our county and the city are important too. I'm not an engineer. I've worked with engineers a lot over my whole career. I've done a lot of communications on major projects, but we need those strategic partners that are leaning in. But we brought the BNSF opportunity forward to them and actually got them to do the local match too. So at the end of the day, we may have to pull a couple 100,000 or 100,000, I think, out of the Magic Fund to match the 100,000 that BNSF has committed. But that's the kind of bigger picture that we're looking at. And then when we do these projects, we want to, like that, for example, bring the resources forward too. Just like we help the city secure the OLDCC grant that will help us with the installation readiness for Sentinel. Mm-hmm. So as we work projects, we want to also make sure we're not putting a burden on the local economy. We're bringing resources that are needed to help with the preparation too.
Yeah, that's like a balancing act that you have there. But it's neat to see that these people is not where Minot's having to open up a checkbook, be like, what can we do to get you here? You guys work that side of it, and then once they get invested in the community, like, dude, actually this is really good, we'll help invest. They're interested in pushing that forward a little bit more. Well,
and think about it, everything we do is about partnerships. Yeah, we don't do any of this without, we have a tiny team at the Chamber EDC. There's 8 of us.
Yeah,
that's incredible. A small team.
Yep.
And if you look at the fact that we have 5 key pillars with our member investor side, which is more your kind of standard chamber, but we're leading economic development, community development, workforce development, and military support. Yeah. Those are 5 big pillars that really impact our community as a whole. We don't do it without the volunteers that we have that chair up our different committees, our governmental affairs, our agribusiness, our infrastructure, energy committees. Those all have a play. And it's also our board of directors. This isn't a board where they just come in and say, everything's good, we're going to move on. This is an engaged board of directors of key leaders in the community that are driving initiatives from higher ed to development projects to investing in the community themselves. Oil and gas is represented on it. It really is. I've been very fortunate in this job to be surrounded by amazing people, because I learned early on, we don't do any of this without great partnerships. And honestly, all of it boils down to having strong relationships, being a trusted partner, and also too knowing that when we work on these things, we sign NDAs a lot of times. North American Iron, for example, we've been working on this for years, but we can't talk about it until the announcement is happening. Oh. So it's a fun time to be here. We've had a lot of wins for the community. We have a lot of good things ahead. But I think sometimes the question of what economic development is, it's hard to answer. And even if we're at a national conference or being spotlighted, the intermodal site, for example, was recognized by IEDC as Economic Development Project of the Year. And we have these wins, but we're so busy doing the work that we sometimes don't stop and celebrate them. They all make a difference for our community because we really do have to drive the entrepreneurial side at the local level, but then also these big initiatives that really impact the economy as a whole.
Absolutely. Any other Indianese that you want to tell us about?
And you know that I don't we don't have a career in this. From my past life to this, I've learned that trust is everything. No, right. And so no, we will not tell you any of that.
Oh, bummer.
But there's a lot of good things coming our way.
Yeah, I believe that. I kid there for sure. But back onto a serious note, something else. Finishing up on the conference, what was maybe an overall highlight that you get done with the conference and you've been able to reflect on, be like, this was really neat that happened at that conference? Maybe it's something that someone said, maybe it was North American Iron, who knows? But
I think for me personally, the fact that we asked our partners to come and be a part of it, Senate Majority Leader Hogue said yes. Yep. Northwest Seaport Alliance, BNSF, Rail Modal Group, all flew in on their own dime to be a part of it, to tell the story about the strategic location of Minot. We asked an international AI speaker to come in, and he said yes.
Wow.
The mayor of a town where the nuclear power plant, Red Wing, Minnesota. I had just toured with North Dakota legislators at power plant, so I've met him before and thought, well, let's ask him. Let's talk about what nuclear power plants have done in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And he said yes. So I think what was really cool to me is that people were willing to come to Minot, tell their stories, and we wouldn't be able to draw those people there if we didn't have those relationships in place.
Right.
And then the fun part was also to the economic developers that haven't been to our community. Their perspective on the energy in Minot, the downtown, the vibrancy. Yeah. They spent both nights after the conference. I know there was a lot of individuals that patronized businesses in our community. It was really fun to see them engaged. And then even when we get them to experience something like the Magic City Discovery Center, and they're just blown away that we have this asset in our community, it's really fun because our development is, if you look at it, we're not just growing on one side of town or the other. We have a new high school, the Minot North Sentinel is on the north side. We have the Discovery Center in the middle. Downtown is continuing to kind of turn and, have great things happen. And then we have a new hospital on the other end.
Right.
And we're embracing all the things in our community, but when others are blown away and say great things, it means a lot. Mm-hmm. And to have peers in the economic development space say, wow, you guys have a lot of great things going on, that makes it all worthwhile.
Absolutely. That's some really great remarks there. We're coming to the end of the interview, but one topic that I really want to touch on, because it seems like it's actually heating up. For a moment, people were curious if it's still going to happen. That's Project Sentinel. This is stuff that has been in the works for a while, but there's been a lot of work that I think even you guys have been part of to make sure that this happens. Kind of talk about kind of the process that you guys have played in helping make sure that Minot has not been forgotten on a radar.
Well, you said we only have a few minutes. I'm not sure how to cover Sentinel in a few minutes. Come on.
Yeah, for real.
So with Project Sentinel, I just have, I'm going to back up a little bit on the role that the Minot Area Chamber EDC plays with military support.
For sure.
We have our military affairs committee. We do appreciation events. We have our honorary commanders program that you see in chambers across the United States. What I think is very unique to Minot is our Task Force 21. It is a group of volunteers that give tirelessly of their time, and they do it for years. I've been a member of Task Force 21 since 2010.
Wow.
And I think I was recently asked the question of, why don't you turn through and give more people these opportunities? Well, it's because this is all about relationships. It's being that trusted source. It's being having a seat at the right table to be able to educate and advocate. And that's what we do through Task Force 21. I'll give one example. The person I had a chance to serve as an honorary commander for it would have been 2011, 12 timeframe, is now set to be the 4-star general in charge of Air Force Global Strike Command, and will take over with the change of command coming up at the beginning of November.
It's a huge relationship.
Dear friend, I've kept in touch with him, seen him through all of his promotions. He is currently serving as the Inspector General out in the DC, And those relationships take decades to build. They're genuine, they're authentic, and we will go to the mat for any one of these leaders and individuals. And the reason why I share that is because the relationships matter. So going to Sentinel, when we look at a major modernization program like that, it is the largest modernization project the Department of War has ever undertaken. Yes, we built out 150 sites before, but we didn't do it while operating this nuclear mission, the land-based leg of the nuclear triad. So now we have to sustain the current mission with the Minuteman III ICBMs and the current sites and make sure that there's only 3 bases with Minuteman III missiles. It is F.E. Warren out of Cheyenne, Wyoming, Malmstrom Air Force Base out of Great Falls, Montana, and Minot Air Force Base here. Each of us have 150 missile sites. We have the operational responsibility of the land-based leg of the nuclear triad. And Minot is unique in the sense that we have 2 legs of the nuclear triad with the land and air, with the B-52 bombers. So as we're going through these major modernization projects, our conversations are very thoughtful. We are still working hard to advocate for concurrency on portions of this project. It originally was announced that FE was first, Malmstrom second, and Minot third. We are also working through, we were brought in by Pentagon officials, General Connor, who is in charge of standing up Sentinel and standing down Minuteman III. He's congressionally appointed to do so. And we have 4 individuals from Task Force 21 that serve as Air Force Global Strike Command civic leaders. I have the honor of serving as a U.S. Air and Space Force civic leader, the only active member on that from North Dakota.
Wow.
And so I have the opportunity to sit down with the Secretary of the Air Force, the Undersecretary, General Saltzman with Space Force, and we have thoughtful conversations on why modernization of the nuclear enterprise matters, what is the role we're playing, how do we move these initiatives forward, how can the community help support that? If we're going to be laying new communications line across utility corridors, how do we use then our local communities? So we have now stood up what's called a Sentinel working group through the Chamber EDC. So Cassidy Jelmstead, the general manager and CEO of SRT Communications, a key utility partner who has gone through laying fiber and broadband through our community, is going to be chairing that effort. And then we're building out a team of individuals that are going to be connected into the leadership working Sentinel, and then also making sure that we're at the right table for these conversations. We have been educating and advocating of why Sentinel is so important. And the reason why that matters is last year, Sentinel program went through what's called the Nunn-McCurdy breach, which meant January 18th of 24, they halted the program. Congress said it's over budget, it's over, the timelines have slipped. We need to congressionally look at this. It's called the Nunn-McCurdy breach. They did a deep dive into the program to see if they were going to continue to support and sustain it. Then July 8th, they came back out and said, yes, this is critically important to our national security and the role the United States plays in protecting the world. We've got to move forward, but we got to innovate and think differently. So we have been to Washington, D.C. We've had a lot of DV or distinguished visitors coming to Minot, looking at how do we shape this program and move it forward efficiently and effectively and get this done as quickly as we can, because from a national security standpoint, it matters. Well, Task Force 21, we are at the table for those conversations with our congressional members, working through, and that's why we do things like host a nuclear triad symposium in Washington, D.C. We just hosted our 14th annual one in September. We'll do it again September 18th of 26. It'll be our 15th annual. And we will bring in think tank leaders. We'll bring in leadership from both the Navy and the Air Force. And we're going to continue these conversations. In April of this next year, we'll host one in North Dakota. So we do play a very critical role in preparing for Sentinel. And that is, we're going to spend a lot of time there. I know we don't have enough time to talk about logistics in detail, but Sentinel is a major program that we're working. It's billions of dollars, but the impact it has globally is critically important too. And so we are working very hard on preparing the state of North Dakota and Minot for Sentinel. What does that look like? What are the new timelines going to be? Because they haven't been announced yet. They will be sooner than later. And so we're working through what that is, and we'll be in lockstep with our leadership through the Department of War and the Air Force as we work through this major modernization program.
Obviously, I'm not looking for anything that is not supposed to be disclosed, but do you anticipate the timelines to be overlapping with some of the North American stuff where there's going to be 1,000 to 2,000 people working on North American iron? Do you anticipate these timelines overlapping maybe a little bit?
There will be some. We're already implementing some components of Sentinel right now through the MILCON or the military construction budgets. For example, I think it's a $95 million helicopter facility is being built on base right now. We did the groundbreaking about a year and a half ago on that to prepare for the Gray Wolf helicopter that's coming.
I see.
So you're already seeing components of Sentinel because that ties to the security forces and protecting the missile sites. We're working through some different partnerships too of how this is being built out. So yes, there will be some overlap. The major construction though, once we know the timeline or can publicly talk about the timelines of Sentinel, you're going to see some overlap with these major projects just because they're moving forward in this next, 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 years.
Yeah, which will be huge, and it'll be good times for Minot. You get to developing some stuff. Very good. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. It's been a very informative conversation about a lot that has happened in the last year.
A lot that is going on and a lot of great things to come. And I just think that Minot is a gem. We have so many great things here from Ag and Energy as you started out.
Right.
But we also have our military. We have education and higher ed. We're rethinking and doing that. I would love to talk even about like the new programs that Minot State has. Dakota College of Botno, the fact that their programs are feeders into the workforce side. We're going to continue to tackle and work hard on workforce development because that matters. So there's a lot of things to celebrate for sure.
Absolutely. Very cool. Very cool. Again, thank you for coming on today. Thank you for watching this episode of Minot Matters at the Dakotan. Be sure to like and subscribe. Join that Dakotan community on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere else. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.